Growing up black in the 1970s meant possessing knowledge that went far beyond textbooks and classrooms. These were survival skills, cultural traditions, and abilities passed down through generations that kept families functioning, communities connected, and dignity intact during times when neither money nor opportunity came easily. Kids mastered techniques that today's generation would find foreign, difficult, or completely unnecessary in a world of technology and convenience. But these weren't just skills. They were rites of passage that separated childhood from maturity, that proved you were ready to contribute to the family's survival, and that connected you to ancestors who had learned the same lessons under even harder circumstances. Here are 25 skills every black kid possessed in the 1970s that have vanished from modern childhood, taking with them something precious that can never quite be recovered. Using a wringer washer without getting your fingers caught was a Monday morning skill that black kids learned by watching their mothers and grandmothers turn laundry day into a precise choreography of timing and caution. The machine sat on the back porch or in the basement, a heavy metal contraption with two rollers that squeezed water from freshly washed clothes. You fed wet fabric between the rollers carefully, using a wooden stick to guide material through while keeping your hands at a safe distance. The rollers turned with mechanical force that could crush fingers if you got careless or distracted. Kids started by watching, then graduated to feeding pillowcases and towels, items that couldn't tangle or pull hands toward the dangerous gap. The rhythmic squeak of the rollers and the splash of water into the basin below became the soundtrack of Monday mornings. Clothes emerged flattened and damp, ready for the outdoor line where they would dry in sun and wind. For black families in the 1970s, the wringer washer represented hard work that modern machines have eliminated, but also a kind of meditative labor where hands stayed busy while minds processed the week ahead. Kids who mastered the wringer learned patience, respect for dangerous equipment, and the value of clean clothes earned through genuine effort. Separating laundry by color and fabric type was domestic science that black kids internalized so deeply they never had to think about it again. Before washing, every piece of clothing got sorted into precise categories: whites with whites, colors with colors, delicates handled separately, and work clothes that were heavily soiled got their own load. Kids learned that mixing colors meant ruined clothing, that hot water shrank certain fabrics, and that bleach could save dingy whites but destroy anything colored. They understood which items needed gentle cycles and which could withstand aggressive agitation. Grandmothers tested children by handing them laundry baskets and watching to see if they sorted correctly without instruction. Mistakes had consequences. A red sock in a white load turned everything pink, teaching lessons about attention to detail that extended far beyond laundry. For black families where clothing represented significant investment and needed to last for years, proper care wasn't optional. Kids who learned to sort laundry were learning larger principles about categorization, consequences, and the importance of doing things right the first time, because there might not be resources to replace what carelessness destroyed. Hanging clothes on outdoor lines using wooden pins in weather that cooperated and didn't was a skill that combined speed, strategy, and weather prediction. After washing, everything went outside to dry on ropes strung between poles or across porches. Kids learned which items hung best on which parts of the line, how to space things for maximum air circulation, and how to secure everything with wooden clothespins that wouldn't leave marks. Sheets got the full length of line, towels folded over to dry evenly, and smaller items clustered at the ends. The challenge came when weather threatened. Kids developed the ability to read clouds and wind, knowing when they needed to rush outside and gather everything before rain arrived. There was an art to removing clothes at peak dryness, before evening moisture made them damp again, but after sun and wind had done their work. The smell of line-dried laundry, that combination of fresh air and sunshine, became one of those sensory memories that marked childhoods. For black kids in the 1970s, clothesline duty taught responsibility because forgotten laundry could mean ruined work uniforms or Sunday clothes left to mildew. The skill connected them to generations of women who had dried laundry the same way, and to a time when working with nature's rhythms was simply how life functioned. Darning socks and mending holes in clothes was needlework that black kids learned because throwing away repairable items was wasteful when money was tight. When socks developed holes in heels or toes, they went into the mending basket, not the trash. Kids learned to stretch the sock over a wooden darning egg or light bulb, weaving thread back and forth across the hole until new fabric replaced what had worn away. The stitches needed to be tight enough to last, but not so tight they created uncomfortable lumps. Pants with torn knees got patches, shirts with loose buttons got them re-sewn, and anything with a small rip got immediate attention before the damage spread. Grandmothers sat children down with needle and thread, teaching them basic stitches that could save a garment. The sewing basket lived in the living room, easily accessible for quick repairs while watching television or talking with family. For black families in the 1970s, mending was economic necessity, but also a value statement about waste and care. Kids who learned to mend understood that taking care of what you had made it last longer, and that not everything needed to be replaced the moment it showed wear. Those needlework skills translated into general competence, the confidence that you could fix things yourself rather than always needing to buy new or hire help. Polishing shoes until they reflected light like mirrors was Sunday morning preparation that black kids performed without being told, because presentation mattered in communities where appearance was scrutinized and judged. The shoe polish came in small round tins, the paste thick and richly colored to match brown or black leather. Kids spread newspaper on the floor, gathered their church shoes, and worked polish into leather using circular motions with brushes or rags. The polish needed time to dry before the real work began, the buffing that brought out shine. Old T-shirts wrapped around hands became buffing cloths, rubbed back and forth across leather until surfaces gleamed. The smell of shoe polish mixed with the sound of cloth against leather became Sunday morning sensory markers. Kids learned to get into crevices, to polish heels and soles, to treat shoes with the respect they deserved as expensive items that needed to last. For black families in the 1970s, shined shoes were non-negotiable for church, school, and any situation where you represented your family in public. Scuffed or dirty shoes suggested you didn't care, that your family didn't maintain standards, that you weren't raised right. Kids who mastered shoe polishing learned that details mattered, that taking time to do something properly was worth the effort, and that pride in appearance started from the ground up. Shucking corn and shelling peas for hours on the porch was summer labor that brought families together around food preparation that couldn't be rushed or mechanized. When corn and peas came into season, bags and bushels would appear in the kitchen, and everyone got drafted for processing duty. Kids sat on porch steps with large bowls between their knees, pulling back corn husks and removing silk, or popping pea pods and running thumbs down the inside to release tiny green spheres into containers. The work was repetitive and time-consuming, but it was also social time when stories got told, gossip got shared, and multiple generations sat together doing the same task their ancestors had done. Hands stayed busy while mouths talked, and the pile of processed vegetables grew slowly but steadily. Kids learned that good food required work, that meals didn't just appear from nowhere, and that contributing to family sustenance was everybody's responsibility. For black families in the 1970s, shucking and shelling was meditation and labor combined, a way to slow down and connect while preparing food that would feed the family for weeks once it was frozen or canned. The skills taught patience, the understanding that some things simply take time, and that rushing produces inferior results. Building and maintaining a wood fire for cooking or heating was practical knowledge that black kids growing up in rural areas or in homes with wood stoves mastered by necessity. They learned to crumple newspaper and arrange kindling in a teepee shape, to add progressively larger pieces of wood as flames caught, and to judge when the fire was hot enough for its intended purpose. Cooking on a wood stove required different skills than gas or electric. You couldn't just turn a dial to adjust temperature. You had to understand fire behavior, to know when to add wood and when to let it burn down, to position pots and pans over the hottest parts of the stove. Kids learned to respect fire's danger while harnessing its utility, to never leave it unattended, and to bank coals properly so the fire could be restarted easily the next morning. The smell of wood smoke, the crack of burning logs, and the warmth radiating from cast iron became winter constants. For Black families in areas where wood heat was economic necessity, children who mastered fire management contributed real value to household functioning. The skills taught patience, the understanding that some things simply take time, and that rushing produces inferior results. Churning butter from cream by hand was domestic production that connected Black kids to agricultural traditions and taught them that food didn't originate in stores. The process started with fresh cream in a wooden or glass churn, and kids took turns working the plunger up and down, agitating the liquid for what felt like forever. Arms got tired, rhythms had to be maintained, and there was always the temptation to rush when the work got boring. But rushing produced inferior butter or incomplete separation. As fat molecules clumped together, the liquid changed texture and sound. Kids learned to recognize the shift from cream to buttermilk to solid butter forming. Once separated, the butter got worked to remove remaining liquid, then salted to taste and stored for use. The satisfaction of turning cream into butter through nothing but physical labor and patience was profound. For Black families in the 1970s who still practiced traditional food production, butter churning connected kids to ancestors who had done the same work and taught lessons about where food came from and how much effort went into things people now bought without thought. The skills emphasized self-sufficiency and the value of patience in achieving results. Wringing out heavy, wet clothes by hand with strength that small bodies had to develop quickly was physical labor that modern machines have eliminated, but that built real muscle and determination. When hand-washing items too large for machines, or when doing laundry without mechanical help, everything had to be wrung by hand to remove excess water. Kids twisted sheets, towels, and clothes with all their strength, wringing until their hands hurt and water no longer streamed out. Two people could work together on large items, each grabbing an end and twisting in opposite directions, a kind of cooperative labor that required coordination. The result was never as dry as machine wringing, but it was good enough for items going to the clothesline. Kids developed hand strength, forearm muscles, and grip power that served them in all kinds of physical tasks. For Black families in the 1970s, hand wringing wasn't just about laundry, it was early training in physical work, in pushing your body beyond comfort, and in understanding that some jobs required real exertion. Kids learned that being capable meant being physically strong enough to do hard things, and that building that strength came from doing the hard things repeatedly until they became manageable. Operating a manual push lawnmower that required real strength and straight lines was yard work that Black kids understood as contribution to the family's presentation to the world. Before gas-powered mowers became universal, many families used manual reel mowers that cut grass through mechanical blades powered entirely by pushing. Kids learned to push hard enough to keep blades spinning, to maintain straight overlapping rows, and to finish the entire yard even when heat and exhaustion made quitting tempting. The mower jammed on thick patches, requiring you to back up and attack from a different angle.
Hills were brutal, pushing upward against gravity and grass resistance simultaneously. But the result was a neat yard that told neighbors your family took pride in their property. For black families in the 1970s especially, yard maintenance was about challenging stereotypes and demonstrating that you maintained your space with care and dignity. Kids who learned to mow learned about persistence, about finishing what you started, and about the satisfaction of transforming something shaggy and unkempt into something neat and presentable through your own labor. The skills built character more than they built lawn care expertise. These 25 skills represented more than practical abilities. They were cultural transmission, character building, and preparation for a world that wouldn't be gentle. Black kids in the 1970s learned through doing, through watching and then performing under supervision until they could be trusted to work independently. They learned that making mistakes was part of mastery, that hard things got easier with practice, and that contributing to family functioning was not optional but expected. These skills taught patience, attention to detail, respect for materials and tools, and the understanding that things of value required effort to achieve and maintain. Modern convenience has eliminated the necessity of most of these abilities, but it has also eliminated the character development that came from mastering them. Kids today don't need to know how to wring clothes, churn butter, or operate manual equipment, but something important disappeared along with those skills. The lessons about persistence, the bonds formed through shared labor, the confidence that came from being genuinely capable in practical ways, all of that faded when machines took over. For those who grew up in the 1970s, these skills remain part of their identity, markers of a childhood that demanded more and therefore produced people who could handle whatever life brought. The nostalgia isn't for the hard work itself, but for what that work taught, for the competence it built, and for the connections it created between generations laboring side by side toward common goals. Which of these skills shaped your childhood? Drop a comment sharing the abilities you mastered that today's kids will never need to learn. Hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep these memories alive and honor the generation that knew how to do everything with their own two hands.